All right, whoops. Hello, hello. Coach K here, live for Wednesday night with the Rebirth Experience. I'm not loving how my lipstick came out, but we're going to go with it, okay? It's better than it was before. This is what we do, and this ties in with the topic in a way. Um, I don't know how to do like the beat face, and I've let a lot of things hold me back from going live as much as I used 2 years ago, and I'm just not doing that anymore. This is for whoever happens to tune in. Okay, I'm not quitting my day job. so, but I feel compelled to share, and this series is something that is near and dear to my heart, and so I hope that it's a blessing to whoever receives it. Now, I don't think we'll be together long today. But I'm just going to jump right in. Our topic tonight is self awareness. And I want to do a recap first of what we talked about in the previous weeks and encourage you to check it out either on my Coach Cara Facebook page or the my YouTube channel, which is also Coach Cara. All right. Week one, we basically talked about the fact that your new life is going to cost you your old life. If you want to design a life you love, there are some things that can't stay. There's no room for new things when so much of the old is crowded in there. And I don't think that we think enough about the fact that in order to gain, you're going to lose. That's just the way that it is. Doesn't mean losing is a bad thing, but there's going to be some change that is necessary, some deletion for addition. You don't get a new job and still keep the old job. You don't get a new relationship and still keep the old relationship. At least you shouldn't, but we know a lot of people do. Sorry for the glare on my glasses, but if I take them off, I'm blind. So if you watch this and you have suggestions, let me know. I definitely need to work on my lighting. Week two, we talked about visualization. Now, I don't think week two was like the best. My energy was really low, but we still did some breath work, and I think that it's still important to do that. Um, what do you want? You're not pleased with where certain things are, how certain things in your life look right now, but what do you want? You have to get clear on that. In order to do that, you need to spend some time really visualizing what would it look like if everything was the way that I want it to be. What would that look like? You would be surprised how many women don't know what they want. My mother turns 84 next month. And she just told me that maybe a month or so ago. Nobody ever asked her what she wanted. She doesn't know what she wants. How can you design anything and you don't know what you want? It's like the equivalent of someone saying, I need a job. But then when you say, okay, what are you looking to do? They have no idea. How are you going to get something that that you like, that you enjoy, that you want to do when you don't even know what that is? So highly encourage you to do that. Then last week, which was my personal favorite, we talked about conquering fears and self forgiveness. We walked through a worksheet on self forgiveness that is so good. And I shared a link there, and I would encourage you to do it. And it's not a one time thing, it's any crisis or situation that occurs in your life. Whip that worksheet out, walk through it. I have to do it myself around some parenting regrets. Anything that's just, especially if it's something that's a consistent issue, you're constantly talking to your friends about it. You're constantly trying to adjust so that the glare isn't there. I don't think it's not working very well, but you're constantly complaining. You're miserable about that thing. Do some self-forgiveness work, especially if it's something that can't be changed. Let it go. I live with almost no regret. Yes, there are things that I wish I did differently, but I'm not stewing over things anymore and constantly in a place of regret and woe is me about what happened. And then today we're talking about self awareness, and I'm going to pull something up that I'm going to share with you guys. Listen, self awareness is hard. I think that it's easier for me and people like me, and I'm going to explain that because I think there's a lot of us out here like this. I go too much to the extreme in terms of self-awareness, like beat myself up with things or obsess about anything that I didn't do perfectly. I don't need you to come for me because I'm going to go on and on unless I didn't realize it. But if I'm this year, I made new commitments to be on time for everything. And I'm realizing how much logistical stuff is involved in that. I got to like map how long it's going to take me to get somewhere. Think about, what I'm going to wear or what I'm going to take. There's a lot of planning that has to go into motion in order for you to just be on time for something. I think we do it for work because that's first of all, that's a roof over your head, and then it's the bread and butter drum beat of our lives. But when it comes to like a social event or something like that that's not tied to the roof over your head, I think people struggle a lot more for that reason. There's a lot of planning that has to take place to get somewhere on time. And so having some self-awareness around that, or well, so that tends to be that's something that I was punishing myself with before. Anything that I did that I felt like could have been better, I'll sit and obsess and obsess and obsess over what I did wrong and how I can do better. So that's the extreme side of the self-awareness. I used to be too open to criticism, which is actually one of the talking points. And then there are folks who are completely disconnected from how they show up in the world. They don't want to know. And if you try to correct them, they bite your head off. Which I've been known to bite a head off, but it's I wouldn't say it's for that reason, but maybe there's some self-awareness in there for me too. It's important though to do this because designing a life that you love may require some internal work. And hey, Dr. Phil is somewhat controversial how people feel about him now, but I'll never forget when he said you can't change what you don't acknowledge. Yep. If you don't acknowledge that something is a problem, it's never going to change. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. And that is one of the things that led me to be really passionate about personal development and personal improvement and things like that. And I just wish if there's one thing that I think would heal the planet, it would be more self-awareness. So listen, don't be like those other people. Okay? Be committed at least for yourself to develop your own self-awareness, a greater sense of who you are as a person. And let me say this before you start any of this, be prepared to forgive yourself, number one, and be okay with not being perfect because nobody is. And one huge thing that can come out of stronger self-awareness, which I actually talk to my team about this at work often, is once I know that I'm not good at being on time, for example, if I have someone in my life, they can hold me accountable. So instead of me being sensitive every time somebody says, "Oh, you're always late," let me just say, "Yeah, I really struggle with tardiness. Can you help me with that?" That's hard. That is so hard for people to do. But you can't change what you don't acknowledge, and you can't get better if no one can tell you anything. And you're so sensitive every time somebody says something to you. And instead of you saying, "I could use some help with that," right? Would that be so hard? Okay, so let's jump in. Let's jump in because we're not going to be here long. I have, oops, we have loads of all of us have loads of other things to do. Let me see here. Where is share my screen. I'm doing this like every week and still can't get it all the way together. All right. Okay. How to design a life you love. Part 4 is on self-awareness. And the first thing that will support you in designing a life that you love and building your self-awareness is journaling. Now, I will admit honestly, this is a challenge for me. Um, Everybody talks about journaling. I want to give you some different ways to think about doing this. First of all, if you can't do it every day, you can still do it episodically. Um, and you can also still focus on these prompts. What triggered me? If your day kind of went off the rails, what do I need more or less of in my life, right? That can reveal a lot over time. Let me focus on the first one, what triggered me. Back when I was actively doing the health coaching and life coaching with the Rebirth Experience, I had a client who was just, it didn't take much at all to set her off. Okay. And one of the things that I gave her, I created this little notebook for her called a trigger tracker. If she ever watches this, she remembers it. Okay. So I gave her this trigger tracker, and every time she was triggered, somebody set her off at work or home or whatever, I encouraged her to pull out her tracker and write it down. Okay. Now, in her case, she eventually got so tired of having to pull that trigger tracker out, baby, that she was like, you know what? I'm not even upset about this anymore. So it worked in a different way than expected. But the point here is, this also ties in with part number two. I really don't think that we take enough time for thinking, just to sit and think, just to sit and think. I know when I was in my 40s and I was raising more children, I just have one son left now. I really felt like I had no time for quiet. And when I did, what did I do? I turned on the TV. I started watching something. So I want to encourage you to take some time to journal. One thing that can help you is on the iPhone. I'm not talking about iPhone versus Android. Every Android user is going to say we can do that, right? But there is an app on built into the iPhone called Journal. You don't have to download anything. If you have an iPhone, it's already on there. It's really dope, y'all. I have lazy fingers, and I'm a writer, by trade. But I get really tired, whether it's handwriting or typing. I just, I'm better at typing. I much prefer typing to handwriting. But what I love about this journal app is you can add in pictures from a place that you went. You can do a video note. You can do a voice note, which is what I tend to do most often, even though even the thought of going back to listen to my own voice note makes me want to think about crying. Like I can't even, watch these videos like I should to critique myself. However, it's really cathartic just to express and get the things out. So sometimes I'll do a voice note and then I'll have a written note over it, kind of telling me just a little bit about what that voice note was about, but it's still there for reflection. Okay. And that's what you want to do. You want to reflect. Listen, you might go back and look at your notes, because journaling doesn't have to be long, by the way. It could just be a couple things you wrote down about your day. You might go back and say, damn, I am bitching about the same thing all the time, right? It's going to help you see yourself. And you need to get comfortable and okay with seeing yourself, which goes into part two, number two, which is why should other people want to be around you if you don't want to be around you? Take some time to sit with yourself. Take yourself out for a cup of coffee if you don't want to do a full dinner, or that sort of thing. I'm into meditation. I'm into deep breathing. I love a mindful walk. There may be something different that you want to do. You may want to sit down with your stillness and your journaling and do that. To roll into number three, ask yourself better questions, right? Don't say, why am I like this? Because the world is already judging you, dear. Why would you judge yourself? Okay. So don't ask, why am I like this? Oh, I can't ever get this right. I don't ever do. No, 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 no. That's a whole nother TED talk. Watch how you talk to yourself. Okay. You talk to yourself. If somebody else talks to you the way you talk to yourself, you punch them in the mouth. So focus on that. Really, really, really in an intentional way. What is this feeling trying to tell me? What do I need right now? Where is this belief coming from? And is it still true? I was going to talk about limiting beliefs tonight, but I felt led to do this instead, because I don't, you need the self-awareness to even go further with the limited beliefs. Now, if you ask yourself these questions, which it's not about asking yourself the specific questions that are right here. It's more so about approaching yourself with curiosity, with whatever questions come to mind for you. And so what I want to encourage you to do, and this is so important, and this is what I struggle with, don't rush. So when I see a prompt like this, what is this feeling trying to tell me right now? I start rushing myself immediately. Oh, what is this feeling trying to tell me? And if I don't come up with anything quickly, I drop it and I go do something else. But I've learned, and one of my spiritual sisters told me, you just need to wait. Let me turn this fan down. Um, I bet you can hear me a lot louder now. I apologize for that. It's this menopause, y'all. Okay. I'm gonna keep it real all the time. But my point is, take your time when you're asking yourself questions and wait for the answers to come to you. That's why you don't need to be in a rush. You can listen to some instrumental music or whatever it takes to kind of get yourself in the flow and be honest. That's all through this. There is no self-awareness without honesty at all. um, no one can lie to you without first lying to themselves. Okay. They have to tell themselves something, even if it's, I'm okay with this lie. Okay. So don't lie to yourself. You can't design a life you love and there's still lies in there. You're going to be talking about, I love my life and all these things, and people are going to be able to tell that it's not true. Because let me tell you, I love my life right now. Okay. There may be things that occur that I don't prefer, but I love my life. I love the hell out of my life right now. And when I have those unpreferred experiences, I can always fall back into the fact that I love my life, that I'm living an authentic life now, that I have created for myself. And it gives me peace even in a storm, which is a huge reason to design a life you love. You're never going to have peace when you don't love the foundational elements of your life. Okay. Let's see here. Notice your triggers. Pay attention to the situations or people that cause strong emotion. Okay. What part of me feels threatened or unseen? Because if you're triggered by something, some of y'all are triggered by Facebook posts that have nothing to do with you. Let's go. We can't go there today either. But if you feel that trigger the next time you see something, don't run from that. Look at yourself. My goodness, why is this bothering me? Oh, it's because of that. And then if you're in therapy, which I think everybody should be, you can make a note and then you can talk to your therapist about that. I read this or I saw this and it's really bothering me and I don't know why. Why do I feel threatened by a post from somebody that I barely know, right? Or somebody that I do know who may or may not even be talking to me. All right. Next, seek honest feedback. Now, this one is a challenge. Okay. And I did this for a course of time, probably a little bit too long. And I'm going to share with you how to keep this from going too far. So, first of all, you need the feedback. And even if it's someone who's not trusted, that doesn't mean what they're saying is not true, right? But it also doesn't mean that you need to deeply digest what they're saying. Okay. I opened myself up a few years back. I think it's been like 12 years. Any and everything people said about me, I would just examine it and be open to it and analyze it. And I'm not suggesting you do anything that I'm describing, but that's what I did. I looked for trends among the things that people said about me. I overcorrected though and tried to go and do all the things and totally change myself. And I think that it actually furthered my approval addiction because I kept trying to please people who weren't really down for me anyway. And they're never going to be pleased. So let's be clear. So that's what brings us to the ask trusted friends. I had a therapist who told me basically I needed to have a council of people that I felt knew me well, that I trusted their opinion. And it has to be both of those things. It has to be someone who they love and trust you, but also they actually know you. You feel known by them. You feel like they understand you. However, they shouldn't be just yes people who are going to just tell you whatever it is you want to hear. That's not going to support you at all. It needs to be people who will tell you the truth and give you that honest feedback. And you can ask them things like, what's something I might not see about myself, or how do you perceive me in certain situations, etc. Whatever the questions are that come to mind. However, listen, you have to be very mindful that you don't react in a defensive way. You don't really need to respond to them much at all because you don't have to ingest everything that they're saying, even if they are a trusted friend. what I would offer is that you take that information from them and you just sit with it. Maybe that's when you go back to number one and you put it in your journal and say, people really perceive me as a selfish person. I want to get defensive, right? I'm not selfish. I just did this. I just did that. But this is how they're experiencing you. So the purpose of your examination is so that you can determine it if there's anything valid there, number one, and then two, do you even want to do anything about it? Listen, I'm almost at a point where I'm done. Like I'm over correcting myself constantly. It's causing me more stress, and I may just accept that I'm always going to be certain ways, and this is how I show up, and people can either deal with it or not deal with it. It's kind of a full circle moment because I was like that when I was younger. However, I feel now like I can return to that because I know my intentions are not to be mean or whatever the things I may be accused of. And then sometimes somebody thinks I'm selfish because they're used to me oversharing, and I'm not doing that anymore. Okay. So there are reasons for it, but don't be so quick to react when you get the feedback. Just thank them. Thank you for the feedback. I'm going to take this into consideration, and then take that within. Go in here, examine it, do some journaling, ask yourself the hard questions, and decide if you want to keep some of what they said, what are you putting back, and then what do I now do with this information to fix it? Because first of all, you can't design a life you love without community. Okay. And if you lack self-awareness and nobody can talk to you about anything, etc., your friendships are definitely suffering. um yeah. So this isn't even on here, but yeah, you're going to have to take a look at your friendships as well, and we may or may not talk about that. We have one more week in this series. And the type of people you surround yourself with has everything to do with designing a life you love. And a lot of the people, if you don't love your life right now, there's some people in your life that are going to have to go, and that's a decision that only you can make. Back on our topic, so you want to track patterns over time, any recurring emotions, behaviors, and situations. What keeps repeating? You know, what keeps repeating is the lesson. What lesson just keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back? That is something that's showing you a part of yourself, a pattern that you have. And it's important to really get in touch with who you are as a person. Once you know yourself, nobody can tell you about yourself, okay? Because you've accepted all sides. And the last one is something that I enjoy: personality and mindset tools. I love these. Actually, I didn't include my favorite one on here, which is the DISC assessment. The Enneagram, I don't know if I said that right, is a cool one too. And people use that. Honestly, I see it a lot on dating profiles. But I'm going to talk about the DISC assessment and shadow work. Okay. The DISC assessment is a personality test. Tony Robbins has one on his website. Eric Thomas was doing something with the DISC assessment. I don't know what's happening with that now. But you answer a series of questions and it tells you what your style is. There's nothing wrong. You can't do anything. There's nothing that's wrong with you, but it's going to show kind of like pros and cons of your personality. It's going to show you if you want to best ways to communicate with Cara, do this, not that. I actually did the DISC assessment with my team and had everybody share how to communicate, with Stacy, and she went down her list, and very, very helpful. And I think they learned a lot about each other as well. But I kept having to say on repeat, there's nothing wrong here. It's not that there's anything that necessarily needs to be fixed. This is who you are. If you see something that you don't love, you can address it, or you can prepare people for the fact that, hey, I'm very blunt, I'm very authentic. This is just how I am. Don't take any offense, right? So there's a lot of reasons to want that information. Shadow work. I wish I had my workbook handy. Okay, I don't. You can find a shadow workbook on Amazon. Shadow work is basically like the side of yourself that you think nobody sees, but baby, we can all see it. We can all smell it. If all of us can't see it, there are people who can. And the shadow work will show you what your shadow looks like. And you just can't get any stronger self-awareness than that. One thing from the workbook that I just remembered, thank you, Holy Spirit, that was so powerful is the author says that there are things that happen to us. Stay with me right in here. There are things that happen to us when we were children, but because of our age, we didn't know how to process it when it occurred. Now, this is not, I'm not just talking about deep, horrible, traumatic events. It could have been anything that occurred that we were a child and we just didn't know what those words meant, or we saw a conversation happen between our parents and we didn't know what that was, or someone said something to you about yourself and you didn't understand it at the time. And what happens is when we hit adulthood, another situation occurs and we're instantly triggered back to the child inside, because it's like, oh, experienced this before, but I didn't know what it was at the time. When it shows up in adulthood, it can manifest in absolutely unhealthy ways. That's why it's so important to sit with yourself, to do personal development work, to work on understanding yourself better so that you can make decisions around what you want in your life to create something that serves you in a better way, you know? So important. So honestly, this is really all that I had for you today. And now I need to get back to my screen. There we are. Okay. Yeah. So that's all I had for you today. I want you to go back through that. I also encourage you to buzz through the other 3 weeks that we did. Your new life will cost you your old. You're going to have to give some stuff up to get something new. Week 2, we did visualization work. Really think about what you want. It's going to take some time. You need to set some time aside. If you're living a life right now and you don't love it, one of the things I love to say and remind myself of is we waited a long time to be grown. You know, I remember being a child thinking about being an adult and how amazing adulting was going to be, right? And then we get up here and it's like, I'm not enjoying this. You get to choose. And that's what this is about. Hey, I'm doing like 5 weeks of talking on this, but I want you to remember that you get to choose the life that you want. And you may think that you're not in charge, and you may have commitments and decisions that you've made, but you don't have to do those things anymore. You really don't. The only thing you really have to do is pay taxes. Okay, you have to pay taxes. You have to keep a roof over your head for sure. But there's so much that you don't have to do. And I encourage you to, if you feel bogged down, make a list of all the crap in your life, all good and bad, all the stuff, and then decide or circle the things that are absolutely mandatory. And after you circle everything that you have to do, or that you do or have to do, or whatever that you think is mandatory, ask yourself, is it really? Because I promise you, especially if you're a woman of age, of a certain age, there's stuff on your list you think is mandatory and it's not. Okay. And I mean, we could even do a talk about self-care. How much of the stuff that's on the list is actually serving you and is taking care of you to fuel you to do all this other stuff? We don't even have time to go there. But you owe it to yourself. You owe you. That was a teaching I did through Eric Thomas. And you owe you to have a life that you love. And so self-awareness is going to help you get there. But you got to be honest with yourself. Listen, if you're honest with yourself, you may end up in some tears. You know, it may hurt a little bit, but nobody else has to see it. Nobody else has to see your notes, whatever it is you wrote down, whatever it is you said, it's just for you. Okay. So do the work. And listen, go back to last week. If you don't watch anything else in this series, hey, Karen, hey, cousin, go watch last week. Self-forgiveness and conquering fears. You got to do it. I shared a worksheet in there that is going to blow your head off. Anybody you're struggling with, any conflict in your life, a situation that you really want to change, whether it's internal, your own regrets, or conflict you're facing with somebody else, go do that worksheet. Sit down and listen. When you get ready, have some water nearby and some tissue. Okay, you're going to need it. Forgive yourself for everything. The people you think you need to forgive, a lot of times we need to forgive ourselves for allowing them to do what they did to us. Okay. That's how you choose. You can't get another person, and trust me, I've tried. You can't always get other people to see their behavior and what they did wrong. That's not the key to designing a life you love. Designing a life you love is all about fixing you. And here it's an internal, it's an inside job, focusing on yourself. Focus on yourself. Spend time with yourself. Calm all the noise. Get some paper, get a pencil, get a sketch pad, listen to some instrumental music, and get in touch with yourself. And I promise you, you won't regret it. You'll be living a life that you love. And when you have those bad days or those days full of experiences that you wish weren't happening, you'll be able to rest at the end of it and say, hey, at least I love my life. Because let me tell you something, baby, I do that every day. Every day. All right, I'm done for tonight. I am doing some camping soon, so I'm getting ready to go out in my shed, my she shed, and work on my camping gear and pull all that together and see if my teenager is doing anything that I told him to do. Listen, I love you guys. Like I used to tell my clients in the rebirth experience, I'm gonna say it again here. I love y'all, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Thank you for joining. And let me say, because she just put this comment here, do a little bit at a time, Karen. It's addictive. Once you really start focusing on yourself, which you've already been doing a lot better, you'll do it more and more and more. But if you don't focus on yourself, you're drained. And so you're bleeding on the people around you, your stress, your frustration, how you're feeling, because they're not going to change. Okay. If they ain't changed by now, they're not going to change. But you're spinning in circles, driving yourself crazy. So don't do it, y'all. You owe yourself so much more. All right. I'll see you next Wednesday night. I'll be here between 7 and 8. I need to come earlier when my lighting is better to close out this series. I have something good for May. Ooh, you're going to love it. I don't even want to tell you in advance, but we have to close this out first. And what we're talking about in May is going to help everything that we've talked about in April around designing a life you love. It almost to the point where I wish we'd done it first, but it's okay because it's the internet and all this stuff's going to be here forever. All right. Love y'all. Bye.